Squanto and the First Thanksgiving by Joyce K. Cassell. Illustrations by Lisa Doms. For thousands of years, people have set aside a special day for giving thanks. People in the United States have celebrated Thanksgiving for over 35 years. How did Thanksgiving start? Most people think it started with the Pilgrims, but the story really begins with the
Indians?
Patuxet Indian named Squanto. Without Squanto, the Pilgrims would have never celebrated that first Thanksgiving. The tribe lived near the place that became Plymouth, Massachusetts. They grew corn and hunted wild animals. They were friendly and peaceful. Then an English ship came to Plymouth
And eat pizza all day and did not have any teeth.
Then an English ship came to Plymouth in early 1600s. Okay.
And had pizza and ate horses all day.
Then an English ship came to Plymouth in the early 1600s. These Englishmen were explorers. They were looking for riches. They hoped to find gold or silver, but all they found was corn and Indians. The Englishmen had never seen corn. They didn't know what to do with it, but they thought they knew what to do with the Indians. They would sell them as slaves. So the Englishmen captured a few of the tribe men. They put them on their ship. They took them back to England. Squanto was one of those men. In England, Squanto had to learn how to speak English. He had to work very hard, but Squanto was used to hard work. Winters in Plymouth had never been long and cold. Sometimes Squanto was hungry all winter long, but the rest of the year he had brought riches. The woods of his home were full of berries and wild animals, and even when he was hungry, he was free. Squanto longed for his home. He dreamt of his people and of his wild, free land. His master could see that Squanto was not happy. He felt sorry for his slave. Finally, he set Squanto free. In 1614, Captain John Smith sailed for the New World. Squanto went with him. He returned at last to his people, but not for long. Yes, Kai?
You got it wrong, then you got it right.
Captain Smith sailed back to England, but he left one of his ships behind. The captain of that ship was named Thomas Hunt. Hunt traded with the Patuxets. He filled his ships with fish and animal furs, but Hunt was greedy. He wanted to make more money than the fish and the furs would bring, so he filled part of his ship with the Patuxet man. Squanto was captured again. After only a few weeks at home, he was sailing back across the ocean. Hunt knew that Captain Smith would be angry with him for capturing the Patuxets, so Hunt sold the Patuxets in Spain instead of England. Squanto's new masters were Catholic monks. They taught him the Christian faith. They were kind to him, but Squanto was sadder than ever. All he wanted was his freedom. At last, the monks took pity on him. They helped him get to England. In England, Squanto was able to find a ship going to America. He was on his way home again. But what great sadness he found when he arrived. Squanto wandered through the Patuxet villages. He could not believe his eyes. All he found were empty huts. The cornfields were black and dead. All of his people were gone. Squanto was the only living Patuxet. What had happened, a nearby tribe told him. The ships from England had brought smallpox germs. Smallpox was a new disease to the Paxuids. They died quickly from it. The disease had killed all of them. After all those years of longing for his home, Squanto found he had no home. He moved in with a nearby tribe. The Pilgrims... The Pilgrims landed at Plymouth on December 21st, 1621. Squanto had been back for 1 year. The Pilgrims were English. They had left England to look for a new home. They wanted to live where they could worship the way they chose. They were lucky to land at Plymouth. The Indians there were afraid of smallpox. They would not fight for their land. The Indians just watched from a distance. The Pilgrims had a hard time. They did not know how to plant. They did not know how to build. They made cold little houses out of mud, clay, and sticks. They were not used to the cold. They did not have much to eat. Half of the Pilgrims died during their first terrible winter. By the spring of 1621, there were only 55 of them left. That was when Squanto decided to help the Pilgrims. He knew how to speak English. He could tell them what to do. In 1621, Squanto went to visit the Pilgrims. After his first visit, he never left them. Squanto taught the Pilgrims how to find animals to shoot for meat. He showed them how to build warm houses. He helped them make friends with nearby Indians. Squanto showed the Pilgrims how to plant. He told them how to watch the leaves on the trees. When they were as big as a squirrel's ear, the corn should be planted. He taught the Pilgrim women how to cook the corn. Yes?
Wait, don't read yet.
What?
His popsicle dropped.
Squanto and the Pilgrims worked very hard all spring and summer. That fall, the Pilgrims had a good harvest. Because of Squanto's help, they would have plenty to eat through the winter. They would also have warm homes. The Pilgrims wanted to celebrate. They wanted to give thanks. They decided to have a feast. They sent Squanto to invite an Indian chief named Massasoit to their dinner. They thought that Massasoit might bring a few people with him. Thanksgiving feasts were not new to the Indians. Their feast was called the Green Corn Dance. It was a huge feast. So Massasoit brought 90 people to the Pilgrims' Thanksgiving feast. The Pilgrims were very surprised, but they tried not to show it. There were 55 Pilgrims and 92 Indians. That made 147 people. The Pilgrims were not sure that they had enough food for everyone. They had to get busy. For 3 days, the woman did nothing but cook. When the day for the feast arrived, everything was ready. What a feast it was! The Indians had brought 5 deer. The woman made these into stew. They roasted turkeys, geese, and ducks. They cooked lobsters, eels, clams, oysters, and fish. They made biscuits and bread. They roasted corn for the hoe cakes. They boiled corn with molasses to make Indian pudding. There were plenty of dried fruit for everyone. Popcorn balls were invented by the Indians in that area. There may even have been popcorn balls. Usually the Pilgrims thought games were a waste of time, but on this day they played. The men held contests. They leaped and jumped and raced. Everyone showed off. The Pilgrims marched, the Indians shot arrows, and people ate until they could hardly move. What a happy day that first Thanksgiving was. The Pilgrims had new, warm homes. They had new friends and plenty of food. They knew they would be able to live through the next winter. And none of it would have happened without the Paxuit Indian named Squanto.
Hey, kids, can I tell you something? Because you're a kid, but you're adults, kids, adults. Can I tell you something?
Hi.
Guess what? Guess what?
What?
Chicken butt. Guess what? Guess what?
What?
Guess what? What?
5-year-old jokes. Afterward, things did not turn out to be easy as they looked on that first Thanksgiving. The winter that followed was even worse than the first for the Pilgrims. Then 3 more ships sailed into Plymouth. They brought hundreds of people, but no food. The crop in 1622 was not a good one, so there was no Thanksgiving that year. Thanksgiving was celebrated again in 1623, but it was celebrated in July to give thanks for the rain. For years, there was no official day for Thanksgiving. People celebrated it whenever they felt like it. Then, in 1864, President Lincoln named the last Thanksgiving in November as the official U.S. Thanksgiving. In 1939, President Roosevelt changed it to the third Thursday. Then, in 1941, it was changed back again.
Change that.
The end.
Now
Thanks
we're
for
reading
reading.
this book.